The type of failure that keeps someone up at night is when they put their entire strategy into ruining you and still fail to complete the task. They can't let anyone know how hard they worked and how unsuccessful they were, so they're trying to hide the receipts now. Imagine giving your everything to someone's downfall and still seeing them come back to life. That is a unique form of humiliation, not merely embarrassment. You continue to move forward while others rush to hide their tracks, living evidence that their best effort was far from sufficient. And they are more hurt by that than by any response you could ever make. The resistance you encountered creates a purposeful pattern that was carefully planned against your particular path. Now, look back with open eyes. Observe how the obstacles materialized precisely as you started to pick up speed. Observe how opportunities vanished just as you were about to seize them. Remember how, against all odds, doors closed at once. Their greatest risk is exposure. Therefore, they work in the shadows. Your ignorance, your faith in coincidence, and your acceptance of hardship as normal are all necessary for their campaign. The power of this opposition starts to erode the instant you realize how coordinated it is. All along, your instincts have been warning you. Your awakened sight, piercing the curtain, is what others reject as paranoia. You sense the truth, while the sleepy majority see nothing wrong. You are useful to the cosmic order precisely because of your heightened awareness, which is also what makes you hazardous to them. You would be astounded at the size of the concealed record, the enormous dossier they have assembled on you, if you could see it. Whole networks built just to track your whereabouts. Resources devoted exclusively to anticipating and thwarting your behavior. Alliances that were created specifically to limit your power. The proof is there, dispersed but understandable to those who can see it. Study groups examining your techniques, communication channels devoted to your actions, and think tanks put together to create defenses against your growing consciousness. Despite its size, the machine leaves behind traces, including paper trails, electrical residue, and digital footprints that are passed off as unrelated activity. The pattern of escalation is the most illuminating. Observe how their strategies become more severe over time. The first subtly discouraging remarks, the next social isolation strategies, and finally, the frontal assaults on your foundation. Their most important secret is revealed by the growing desperation. Nothing went as planned. They are betrayed by their enormous investment. No regular person deserves this kind of attention. Such resources are not justified for any random target. The best gauge of your potential is the scale of their opposition. It's a more accurate gauge than any compliment could offer. The more they try to keep you in check, the more power they think you have. Their most pernicious tactic is to make you doubt your own perception by purposefully introducing doubt into your thoughts, first subtly and then boldly. Recall the times you started to question your own recollection of events, when you wondered whether you were seeing patterns where none existed, and when you thought maybe you were the issue after all. This was intentional. They deliberately kept you apart from those who could validate your experiences, surrounding you with voices that supported their story and produced settings in which your truth seemed unbelievable, even to you. Only in hindsight does the planned character of this seclusion become clear. How methodically encouraging relationships were broken while skeptics' voices were brought closer. Their primary weapon against the awakened is gaslighting, persistently implying that your perception is faulty, subtly rewriting recent events, confidently delivering lies about what was said or done, and appealing to consensus reality that deviates from your first-hand experience. All of which are designed to cause you to question the very consciousness that gives you power. And yet here you are, retaining your lucidity in spite of the cognitive dissonance they created. Amazing. Even while their fabricated story dominated popular perception, you clung to your truth, maybe faltering occasionally, but never completely giving it up. You stand out from those who give in readily because of your resistance to psychological manipulation. Through their exaggerated reactions, they have continually exposed themselves. Think about the times when your simplest actions led to enormous countermeasures, a straightforward inquiry that started a complex diversionary effort, a tiny discovery that led to systemic policy changes, or an innocent observation that led to the revision of complete protocols. These overreactions are admissions of your importance, confessions. Making natural problems elicit proportionate reactions was never their intention. Excessive responses to little threats are a sign of orchestrated opposition. The machine's frantic efforts to stay hidden reveal its existence. When you make connections they thought were hidden, watch for the frantic damage control that follows your tiniest successes, the terror that follows, and the abrupt participation of higher authorities when you break beyond outer boundaries of awareness. Acquire these unintentional admissions. Keep track of the overreactions. Take note of the trend of increasing reactions to your growing consciousness. By failing to reply proportionately, they have unintentionally made a record of their disagreement. This record turns into proof that the opposition is real and that your course jeopardizes something they are trying so hard to defend. Their demand for secrecy has turned into your biggest defense against them. They are unable to publicly acknowledge their effort without making its presence known to the public. They cannot openly express their opposition without endorsing your viewpoint. Their options for strategy are significantly reduced by this enforced silence. They have to make up believable cover stories when they are unable to identify their actual motivations. They have to keep the appearance of disjointed occurrences going when they are unable to disclose their coordination. They have to act unconcerned with your advancement when they are unable to admit that they are afraid of your potential. If you've been touched by God's goodness, don't keep it to yourself. Click Super Thank You and sow a gift of $50 or more to help spread His light. Your giving becomes a ripple of grace, blessing hearts and building His kingdom. Let His overflow pour through you. These limitations provide their strategy exploitable flaws. When they are unable to openly express their dissent, the balance of power drastically changes. Their power rests on their capacity to publicly categorize and reject dangers as well as on social validation. Without this choice, they are forced to use proxies and artificial conditions, which reduces their efficacy and raises their resource usage. Turn their dedication to darkness against them. Make areas that people favor dark more light-filled. Talk clearly about the patterns they need to keep unnamed. When someone who knows its purpose takes advantage of them, their operational need for denial turns into a strategic vulnerability. When you use their silence as a weapon, it can be very effective. Every campaign has expenses. Resources are needed for every operation. Participants in any coordinated effort must be dedicated, focused, and full of enthusiasm. Nothing can be sustained forever. Their opposition's economy is based on the unchangeable laws of decreasing returns. Critical resource depletion is forced by your resilience. Every assault you repel without cracking, every failure you overcome by adapting, every challenge you turn into a chance, every instance of your tenacity raises the estimated price of their further resistance. You just have to live. They have to keep winning. Your endurance is favored by the asymmetry. When their ability to oppose you is surpassed, when sustaining their campaign necessitates abandoning other objectives, when defending their focus demands outcomes they are unable to achieve, and when continuing their efforts jeopardizes the structural integrity of their own systems. The time has come. Even though they would never acknowledge it, this turning point signifies the start of their retreat. The psychological disintegration of people committed to your destruction is far more detrimental to their campaign than the depletion of resources. For human systems to remain coordinated, conviction is necessary. Collective activity is sustained by a shared sense of purpose. This fundamental agreement is undermined when a purportedly manageable aim is repeatedly failed to meet. Observe the internal disintegration taking place within their ranks, the increasing disenchantment among those entrusted with your repression, the doubting of leadership choices after tactics fail, time and time again, the declining morale as your continued promotion defies their expectations, the cognitive dissonance between their apparent inefficiency and their assumed power. Opposition hierarchies experience identity crises as a result of persistent failure. When you consistently show them how helpless they are, those who define themselves by their ability to influence events risk existential danger. When you continuously defy their models, those who have based their livelihoods on prediction accuracy face a crisis in their professions. With every indication of your growth, those who pledge to keep you contained lose credibility. The process starts when departmental doubt about the mission leads to blame, which then escalates into mistrust of information sharing, internal competition for dwindling resources, and competition that degenerates into sabotage of parallel operations. The united front splits into rival groups, each of whom defines failure in a way that absolves them of their own accountability. You didn't stumble here by accident, you were led. If something in your spirit is stirring, don't ignore it. Tap Join to access exclusive content, prophetic insights, and a community of purpose-driven souls. This isn't just a membership, it's your moment of alignment. Step into who you were born to be. Welcome to the Chosen. Recognize the subtle signs that their unity is eroding. Conflicting statements from various opposing groups, inconsistent tactics taking the place of a unified strategy, and more obvious disputes between individuals who were once on the same page. These indicate the breakdown of the collective will required to continue their campaign, the psychological collapse that comes before systemic failure. But they that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. Isaiah 40:31. Now, let me talk to you like we're sitting on the front porch with a glass of sweet tea, heart to heart. You ever watched an eagle in a storm? While every other bird is running for cover, the eagle rises, not because the storm disappears, but because it knows how to ride the wind. That storm, meant to break it, elevates it. It doesn't flap harder, it stretches wider. The same storm that takes out the sparrow takes the eagle higher. Now hear me, chosen one, that eagle is you. You're stronger now, not in spite of the attacks, but because of them. They tried to crush you, and all they did was craft you. Their resistance didn't stop your destiny, it shaped it. You were forged in fire. They thought they were burying you, but really they were building you. Every lie sharpened your discernment. Every betrayal trained your pattern recognition. Every silence taught you emotional endurance. Every setback upgraded your strategy. You didn't just survive, you leveled up. And it wasn't luck, baby. It was design. See, if life had been easy, you might have never discovered what was inside you. But pressure pulled it out. You didn't find your voice in comfort, you found it in chaos. You didn't unlock your wisdom at the summit. You tapped into it in the valley. God used their plans against them. What they meant for evil, it turned into elevation. They became the sandpaper that polished you, the storm that revealed your wings. They were the sharpening stone that brought out your edge. And now look at you, clearer, wiser, stronger, calmer, operating with precision, speaking with authority, walking with grace. You were never average. You were anointed. And now you move with heaven's strategy and earth's fire. They built the furnace, but God stood in it with you. And you didn't just come out alive, you came out refined. Don't ever forget, the attack was confirmation. Your strength today is the proof. And baby, the eagle is already in flight. Your extraordinary progress was sparked by their attempts to confine you. Determine the special abilities you currently possess that only came about as a result of their pressure. The very traits that make you strong were created out of necessity by the evolutionary pressure to change or perish. Through the paradoxical consequence of targeted resistance, the very qualities of your character that they aimed to suppress have turned into your strongest points. The creation of precisely what they feared was the campaign's final legacy. They created the precise conditions necessary for its acceleration in an effort to stop your emergence. They provided the exact stimulation you needed to awaken as they worked to keep you unconscious. They have inadvertently contributed to the realization of their darkest fear, the fully realized you they fought so hard to avoid. You are currently at the intersection of several potential futures. The road they laid out for you, the limited shortened course they sketched, is a deserted place. Instead, with every sovereign decision that goes against their expectations, you intentionally create alternate timelines. They made the basic mistake of thinking that they could use probability models that apply to the unconscious majority to forecast and influence your choices. You can deviate from expected behavioral patterns when you're awake. Deliberately choosing unexpected options is made possible by your awareness of manipulation. Creating alternate tales consciously is made possible by your awareness of their intended script. The preset tales they created are practically rewritten by your focused intention. You change the likelihood of the future each time you choose self-belief against ingrained uncertainty. Every time you act in a sovereign, rather than a reactive manner, you cause causal ripples that upset their meticulously planned results. Because they were unable to predict your vibratory shift, the opportunities they were unable to block arise. When you work with a broader perspective, possibilities that are not visible in their prediction models become apparent. When you keep the frequencies they thought were silenced, connections outside of their mapping systems become active. When you reject the restricted channels they observed, SIC, that they never accounted for, show up. Chance itself is bent by your focused will, a mathematical anomaly in their models, a recurring departure that resists regression to predicted means is represented by the statistical unlikely probability of your continuous progress. By generating outcome clusters that should be statistically impossible based on their knowledge of chance and causality, your focused desire acts as a force that alters reality. Those who know what to look for can find proof on the battlefield. Some forms of interference have stopped for no apparent reason. Once often targeted, certain pressure points are now unaffected. Certain resistance strategies that were once used without hesitation have been subtly pulled back. There is never any recognition of these operational abandonments. They stop without a formal notification. Their withdrawal is not accompanied by an admission of failure. There is no justification provided for strategic withdrawals. The evidence is the absence itself. The shape of what had occupied the negative space is revealed. Take note of the minor changes in attention from regions where they used to concentrate unrelentingly. Take note of the revised goals, which no longer include the outcomes they once gave priority to. Understand how success measures have been reframed to easily omit measurements that have repeatedly failed you. The evidence is found in operational gaps they hoped would go unnoticed. Specialized teams disbanded despite prior emphasis on their importance. Personnel discreetly reassigned from your surveillance. Resources suddenly reallocated away from your containment, and projects abruptly defunded without public explanation. Under the cover of organizational change, these are tactical compromises they never meant to make public. The ultimate triumph is achieved by rising to frequencies where their attempts are completely inconsequential, not by defeating them on their terms. Their lower dimensional tactics, such as attempting to capture radio waves with a fishing net, become outdated when you access a higher consciousness. Direct confrontation with the opposition is no longer necessary for those who have genuinely awakened. Their resistance is not battled, but simply transformed into another form of material density when they are functioning from expanded awareness. Instead of being intentional attacks to counter, their attempts to impede seem like natural environmental characteristics to navigate. Their location becomes no more unique than gravity, but another feature of the physical plane's constraints. The instant you see how fabricated the tension they created is, liberation comes through disengagement from their manufactured game. You are allowed to set up completely different interaction coordinates as soon as you realize that participating on their terms entails accepting their parameters. Their whole strategy hinges on your involvement in a paradigm that you may easily transcend. Discover tranquility outside of the dualistic conflict they were ensnared in. Binary antagonism is necessary for their operating framework. Dominance, submission, control, chaos, and us-them. Such polarities are rendered partial truths within a wider unified field by the paradox, integration, and transcending perspective that your expanded consciousness embraces. You are teaching them. Take note of how, after failing to repress your worldview, they have subtly modified theirs. Observe how ideas they once mocked are gradually being incorporated. Acknowledge the acceptance of viewpoints that they had previously denounced. Observe the incorporation of methods they once sought to undermine. Those with eyes can observe the indicators as they appear. Your adversaries now covertly research your strategies. The exact tactics they openly denounce, they examine in private. They covertly modify the frameworks they formally reject. They investigate the awareness they deny on the outside. Their basic presumptions have been reluctantly re-examined as a result of your shown tenacity. Lessons acquired from their failure with you are starting to show in their strategies against others. Take note of how variables they found through your disobedience of earlier projections are now included in their predictive models. After they miscalculated with you, see how their resource allocation now reflects priorities that have been modified. Your greatest influence, serving as their unrecognized evolutionary template. The discoveries your resistance forced upon them caused them to restructure their activities without ever acknowledging your impact. They assimilate the broader understanding your existence forced they acknowledge without ever giving credit to your presentation. They reconstruct their systems to fit the larger reality you forced them to see, but they never acknowledge your win. Potential is always reflected in opposition. The amount of your potential influence is exactly reflected in the scale of resistance used against you. The transformative power you possess is precisely matched by the intricate apparatus put in place to contain you. The cosmic mirror is always truthful. The suppressive response is minimal for those with little disruptive potential. People with revolutionary consciousness face revolutionary resistance. Their most honest estimate of your talents is based on the complex mechanisms designed to restrict you. It is considerably more accurate than any assessment they would intentionally offer. Cosmic confirmation is provided by this flawless calibration. The resources devoted to your containment can be used to determine your precise level of importance. By examining the level of sophistication of the countermeasures used against your gift, you can ascertain its exact value. The multi-layered defenses that formed existing structures around you can be used to quantify the precise threat that you pose to them. Their response's desperation is a testament to your significance. The way their efforts are coordinated documents your potential. The fact that they continue to pay attention validates your goal. The focused opposition of those who strive to preserve limitation consciousness on this plane is the greatest cosmic endorsement. The moment has arrived to completely assert what you have already accomplished, to stand in the unshakable, knowing that their campaign was unsuccessful, to announce your sovereignty as a current fact that they were powerless to stop despite their best efforts. Declare this statement to be true. Social exclusion, psychological manipulation, resource deprivation, reputational damage, and identity instability were all thrown at you, and yet you persevered. Even after they implemented their most advanced control measures, you continued to grow. They used their best suppression techniques, yet you still got up. You are surrounded by evidence, the abilities you have acquired in spite of their meddling, the consciousness you have retained in spite of their distortions, the integrity you have maintained in spite of their corrupting influence, and the goal you have pursued in spite of their obstructions. These concrete facts bear witness to a triumph they can no longer deny but will never recognize. Their operational model is seriously threatened by your continuous presence in enlarged awareness. Their basic assumption that such awareness can be consistently suppressed is refuted by the fact that you operate from a greater state of consciousness every day. Their fundamental premise that control systems would always win out is refuted by every second you spend in sovereign alignment. Their most important governing belief has been refuted by your own existence. They don't want anyone to know how hard they tried to break you, but couldn't. Their entire structure would become vulnerable if this fact were acknowledged. Their influence would be exposed when their unsuccessful effort was made public. Others would be encouraged to acknowledge control structures as essentially voluntary by the documenting of their failed suppression. For this reason, they conceal the extent of their work. They hide the magnitude of their opposition for this reason. They conceal the scope of their campaign for this reason. For this reason, they never acknowledge the amount of money they spent on destroying an uncontrollable mind. However, you are aware, and that awareness has released you. Now stand in the unassailable reality of what has already happened. They did everything they could to keep you from waking, but you still did. Even after they employed their most sophisticated control technology, you managed to escape. You transcended even after they put their most extensive suppression mechanisms into place. It is finished. It is not the future. The victory is not on the horizon. You've already prevailed. Be appropriate.